You are listening to the Firecracker Podcast with Tony Rico.
Okay, we are live once again with Mr. Doug Meyers, and usually I call it the Doug and Don show, but Don Minard's he's out getting his eyes checked after he passed his driver's test with his one eye. And you all just missed Doug just trying to put the headphones on right now, which is I still have trouble opening cereal boxes and envelopes. The girls don't let me touch the mail around here. It's a good thing we do something well. So we are here. It's another Tuesday morning. We've covered history. Some of just the fun stories, listen to kind of Doug and Don reminisce about some different things. But, one of the greatest values I think of having you in this office, Doug, is let's talk a little softball this morning.
Love that.
Let's talk a little bit. I want to, I'd like that you prepare a list and kind of go and create topics during the week and stuff. But right now, we were just mentioning, so I'll kind of segue into this, and then we'll go back and actually talk a little bit of slapping and stuff. But we were talking about when we compete against other teams in situations where, our teams are doing well, performing well in the field, scoring runs, but there's a limit. There's a limit on either not so much how many runs we score, but, when to back off the throttle a little bit, And we were just mentioning the fact that there have been times where it's not just as easy as having a runner leave early off the base and end the inning.
Right.
In concept, you feel like you're helping somebody out. But in that competitive moment, some coaches are so frustrated and angry, they take that the wrong way. And, we're really just trying to get out of the inning. So what I'm describing is maybe we scored 10 runs or so, or up, 14-0 or 1. It just doesn't feel good after a while. And we just want to help the inning end. So we have a runner leave early off the base. Always warn the umpire ahead of time because we wouldn't want them to miss it. Right. But my point is that that's not always as well received either. But how do you handle that when your team's doing well?
Well, it's just funny that you mention it because we had a situation this weekend. We were playing. I don't really want to mention the team, sure, but they've been one of the best teams in PGF. Okay, and they may or not be this year. They lost a lot of players from their team last year, and we got in a situation where we went through the first time through the order. We batted 16. Okay, 12 before they got an out. That being said, a lot of it was on, and their coach left the same pitcher in throughout the whole game. So we scored 2 runs after that the rest of the game. And I thought Bruce did a great job of talking to the team. He says, we're not gonna laugh. We're not gonna do anything that's gonna be misinterpreted. But we're just gonna play the game. We're not gonna take
extra bases. But we still have to swing the bat.
Exactly. Sure. Our slappers, they were swinging away, which is something they need to work on.
Sure.
But they're not bunting. We're not stealing. But balls in the gap, we're running. We might run 2 bases, but we're not going to try to embarrass anybody.
Sure.
And I think the way he handled that and said that, I think made a difference in the team. And afterwards, we talked to the coaches and. Everybody's gone through something like that.
Sure. You can really break down a barrier if you let the third base coach know, hey, next inning, listen, we're not going to do this. We're going to work on this. We're going to work on that. That conversation or sentence before the action can really take care of a lot of misperceptions on what's going on,
And it's happened before. It happened to me in high school. It happened to me in...
We've all been on the receiving end of it.
I was our first national championship that we won. We had, we were playing up an 1800 team. And we got annihilated by him. It actually happened on our best team, our 2010 team, when you guys just beat the crap out of us. Mm-hmm. Chamberlain had a ball that's still going. Mm-hmm. So it does happen. But right. but the thing is, you got to take those for learning experiences. I think the tendency with most coaches in that situation is to get all over their players, start screaming and yelling at people. One of the problems that happens to a team when they're doing bad, or let's say a pitcher's throwing a lot of pitches, is your fielders are on their heels a little bit too much. And so when they hit the ball, you're not ready for it.
Right.
And it's just, it's almost like it's contagious.
So if you were giving advice to a lot of the coaches listening out there, trying to work their way up that competitive food chain, but is that one of the biggest mistakes you see as far as what happens emotionally when things aren't going well to another team? I always tell a lot of teams, you don't understand how easy you make it for us, to do our thing because you're imploding.
I definitely feel that's a big problem. And
so what's your advice to them on how to handle that? Here you are in the moment, rhetorical questions. What are we doing? The umpire's not doing it, but what's your advice to these young?
It depends on which side of the ball we're on. If we're winning or losing. Let's say we're losing.
Say we're losing.
Okay. So ideally the best thing to do is pull your team together and just tell them, we're starting this game new. 0-0 in our mind. Let's play this game from scratch.
And it could be 8-0 at this point.
Exactly.
Sure.
And I said that we're gonna play the game like it's 0-0. We're gonna do the little things well. Every ball has hit you. I think that's one of the things that I see from our team when things aren't doing well. It's just like some of our infielders are flat-footed, and there's a lack of communication. That communication usually is negative.
So the anticipation is gone. Now the communication diminishes, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then, just try to be as positive as you can in those situations.
It's kind of like a riptide in the ocean. It'll take you next thing you know, you're in the wrong place and swimming against the current.
And there's very, very few coaches that handle this, I think, the right way. The easiest thing in the world is just get mad and do the blame game.
And you think that's there's so much of what we do that's traditionally accepted. So even our behaviors and things, but it just seems like nowadays you just can't lose your cool. Now listen, there's a lot of ways to get a point across. You can be sarcastic, you can be whatever, sometimes abrasive, all within the context and the balance of a relationship with a young person, which is getting really hard to do nowadays, to maintain that balance, that relationship. The responsibility really upon coaches, which is an understandable responsibility, but so many of them aren't prepared for, the liabilities that are there when you're misunderstood or when you lost it. Right. I mean, you made a mistake. You overreacted. You said something you shouldn't have said. Well, and we have a lot of coaches out there that do that on a weekly basis.
Exactly. I think the debriefing is important, though, afterwards when you're sitting with your team and talking. But again, not losing your temper, not blaming one person.
Not a therapy session to where you're bringing your team and you're berating them and telling them everything they did. But the key word there is debriefing. Debriefing.
Usually when these things usually these things happen as your pitchers are falling behind in the count. We're not making easy plays that we should defensively.
Do you take notes during a game that you will cover after a game? How do you go acquire the material, know what you're going to talk about after a game? Just what's in your head, or you ever make notes?
I do make notes, but again, this is the team I'm with Bruce. I'm not the head coach, and so most of the talking after the game is through the head coach.
So how about in the past when you've ran your own teams?
Definitely, and I've tried to get. I tried to get all of our, give our assistant coaches from different perspectives. We'd hit one, but I don't want to just beat over, because you'll have one person talk about one thing and then the next person talk about the same thing.
Yeah, and everyone's just getting it off their chest.
And,
it's kind of that balance too, because you have coaches. We have quite a big coaching staff, and they all have something to offer. And I'm trying to balance between, what can be too long of a talk. Too many times you give them the floor, but also allowing them to impart their insight because they're there to teach. It's a little tricky balance, But I think for the most part, that post-game talk is not really utilized the way it should be. And you think about it, debriefing is you're going over what just happened. So I played for a coach in college that it would be getting dark outside after practice, and he said, "Boys, we're not going home. We're not leaving this dugout till we go over everything on this list, because if we go everything on this list, taking a base on a ball in the dirt." Whatever, so many different things. He goes, then they don't happen over and over again. And that's always held true between my philosophical parts of my talks, which can be lengthy, but the debriefing of the game. And that's really important, because each game we're learning. And as you've mentioned before in our podcast, that we play more than we practice. So if we can't take care of things before and after games that need to be covered, well, now it's redundant. We're just kind of doing the same things over and over.
One of the things when you were talking about coaching, and I made this one of the things, I think when you assemble your coaching staff is or how you do it. At least to me, it's important. It's different than it is in high school, obviously, than travel ball. First of all, you have to have people that can work under that time frame. I mean, be able to get off work or whatever, like at
So just starting with their schedule that allows them to participate, which is not always easy.
one of the things I like is loyalty, as far as knowing that the coaches have your back.
Yeah. So describe that, right?
Well, I don't mean that somebody should be a yes man.
Right.
I just think it's easy. The head coach has a lot more on his plate than assistants, and I'm assistant right now, and I absolutely love what I'm doing. I mean, I can sit there and I don't have to worry about the difficult conversations you have with parents or some of the.
It's a different role.
And if your team cuts players, how you go about doing that. And when I do have to do that situation with cutting players, I try to take it on how they would like to have it heard, and I don't avoid it. I talk to them. I just tell them what you see their role being, and how you don't think this is such a great fit for them because this is going to be, you're not seeing things that are going to change, and offer to help them to try to find another team, and just tell them if they choose to stay here, they can, but the situation's really not going to change in your
So you look at yourself as an extension of the head coach, and what I want a lot of coaches out there to hear is that, Doug doesn't go after a game, and he's never done it once in this office of, oh, well, here's what I would have done. Well, I don't know why and there's a lot of that in softball, and when you catch yourself doing that, again, you're doing what's so easy to do because we can all, point the finger and blame and this and that, but that loyalty is, you don't always have to agree. You don't have to be a yes person, but you're always going to have their back. And you're not going to be bad-mouthing and questioning the operation, because anybody that hears that, that's a really tough situation. So we just heard the door creak open. We're going to pause real quick because Mr. Minard has entered the building. And we are back. Now joining us is Mr. Minard, and I don't know. We'll decide after the podcast whether this is a PG-13 or rated R, or whether we break the barriers today. So, Don, we were just talking a little bit about coaching staffs right now. We're talking a little more softball today, and Doug was talking about picking your coaching staff and mentioning the loyalty aspect of it, which I can tell you I've experienced because. Well, gosh, I guess it would come out now, but knowing that not every decision you make is going to work, or that things always turn out right in the end. But I've always felt that our coaching staff has had my back, and so we're just talking that type of loyalty. It's not that you're a yes person or that you have to agree with everything, but you're not walking around saying what you would have done differently. And I think that's a really important point for all of our coaches listening to take.
Yeah, you're right about that. And then the other thing is that even though you don't agree with the head guy, you settle that afterwards.
Right.
If you have a disagreement, then you settle that afterwards. You don't settle that in front of people.
Totally agree.
You back them until you go and have a chat.
And loyalty over time, I'd say proves itself over time. So, I'm really fortunate, and we've been fortunate that all of our coaches and the coaching staff has been together a relatively long time, the shortest time. Well, Rob joined us 4 or 5 years ago, but Kenny and Jim have both been with us 10 years. Don joined the program in the year 2000. And we've probably had, off the top of my head, maybe only 2 or 3 times where Don's had to pull me aside afterwards and say, here's what I thought of that.
That's impressive.
But that's something that I think that compatibility too is important too, because compatibility doesn't mean it's someone just like you, because I don't know what I'd do if I had another coach on our staff that was just like me. That would drive me nuts. So that compatibility is people that are different than you, and they have a different persona, different temperament, different way of looking, and checks and balances. You need that checks and balances in that dugout.
One of the things I was going to mention is I'm really impressed with what the Rams are doing this year in football. Their young coach, what he's done as far as delegating authority.
Yeah.
And I know there's certain programs in softball that where they had the head coach. He coach at third. He calls pitches. He totally involved, and you got a lot of other coaches that are basically just sitting there and watching.
Right.
I think it's important that you can understand roles, and for the head coach, even though he's good in some areas, he delegates that out to others, whether it be as working with the infield or you have a guy that's recruiting is so important right now. So you need like Don, a recruiting coordinator, let's say, or yourself.
Right.
And there's a lot of different ways you can handle and make your assistant coaches feel important.
Sure. Well, there's not even so much when the game starts, but once things are going on, everyone knows where they should be and kind of in their places. And we have different situations where people can get settled into a role in a certain place in the dugout, but also have the freedom of being able to go out and talk with people or do whatever you need to do. Sometimes I know in our current situation, whenever I enter the dugout, it kind of displaces people because I'm not in there all the time. So it's like, where can I put my chair and not kind of disrupt some of the things that's going on. But that's important. Let your coaches know that they have something to offer. Very, very much so. Also, you just mentioned the different aspects. Robin coming in, she takes care of a lot of the stuff. Let's call it in between. All of the things that need to be done with the team that are the day-to-day operations that Dawn's done for a lot of years, and I always need someone to do that, but that is just invaluable, constant. So right now she was walking in just to take care of the uniforms for this weekend, just so we have that all, because that communication on the front end of it too. And I think that's something that I learned along the way too, is being able to know that your team can be communicated with. A lot of coaches, and I would be prime suspect for this if we didn't have the structure we have here, is letting them know too late what you're doing, too late with practices. Obviously game times and things change like that too, but be organized.
Now, has she been with you for years, or has she been?
So Robin started taking care of us when she was a Worth representative working for the Worth Sports Company. And so that goes back to, I'm going to say 2002. Maybe,
wow, that's
around that time.
Yeah, I think so. I did the hotels and all of that stuff.
Don was administrating us, but what happened was we were under the Worth umbrella for the flag for a few years, and then the gentleman that had kind of got that going kind of disappeared off the map a little bit. So we were kind of in limbo, but we weren't looking for anything. And Robin stepped forward. I'm going to guess 2004, 2003. And just said, "Hey, look, I noticed no one's really been taking care of you. I'd like to be able to step in as a Worth associate and take care of you." So she started doing that, and really what it was, Doug, is it wasn't someone just fulfilling their responsibilities to their job. She took a caring to us, and you could see that she was a fan of what we were doing, and she started to take to the girls. And so I don't even know the year. Don may remember better than I, but when Worth had let her go. And so it was kind of time to put Robin on the scale and say, well, wait a minute, do we just let her go because their company is no longer? And it didn't take very long for us to find a position here. And right now she's the national equipment coordinator for the firecrackers across the country. And then she's the team coordinator for our team.
That's awesome.
So she stays busy. Yeah. And she's,
that's really good from so many different standpoints. But one is that she's been here for years. Most teams just have, a parent, let's say a team mom.
Right.
That handles this stuff, or she'll handle.
But in today's day and age, that's where, again, people are falling short. So number one is you either have someone that's well-intended but unqualified, or you have someone that's very qualified putting in an overextended amount of time doing that job, which, again, I don't believe in compensating people for the sake of compensating them. It's knowing what works for them and kind of if they have needs and things like that, because there are so many people providing professional services in today's softball world. Like I said, recruiting. What does it take to print one of these profiles? Remember those books we used to? What did that take to do a book? We used to have recruiting books. Each kid had her own page, and every year the media guide. But what was that like?
That was difficult, very difficult. But we put out a good one almost every year. And then it just got to the point where we didn't need a book anymore. The team was so well known, and our kids were pretty elite type kids, and they were signed. And then this early signing thing came up, and so they were signed pretty quickly, or admitted pretty quickly, I should say.
And then it came down to fact like the college media guides. Then it ended up where these college coaches are coming out, but they have too many media books and they're too heavy. And so what do we have now? We have the one-page profile.
Right.
And you even had, I really thought this was going to take off, but it never really did. But then when they started, with Bob started to create the barcode, you could literally walk up, Doug, and scan the barcode on the profile sheet, and then all of that just goes into your phone. And I really thought that was going to, kind of take a hold. There's so many services and so many different options for families out there too. But just how to condense that. So our book nowadays would be, outdated and way too heavy.
The one thing you're talking. One thing is 90% of the teams do need like recruiting coordinators or people.
Sure, absolutely.
But the problem when you rely on a parent, I see, is first of all, if their kid's not playing or doing well,
they're a little emotionally involved in a.
That's what I used to say about what do you call it in high schools, the board, and it's directly proportional to the playing time of their kid.
Yeah.
You can see.
The power of the booster club president is quite a coveted position nowadays. With a lot of programs, not ethical programs.
What is their motivation for doing it? Also, it's like I used to, the mom that keeps score, and I used to start off by telling everybody, the best way to improve your batting average, don't worry about getting a batting coach. Just have your mom keep score. She'll figure a way to get you, at least 50 points higher on her batting average.
Well, and that falls into that statistical category. I remember the first day of statistics class in college. First statement out of the professor's mouth was, "If your statistics don't back your theory, you need more statistics."
Do you remember the days with Robin York and Matt's daughter Lisa?
I was in the middle of it.
You were in the middle of that. So here they were the two best hitters in the country without question, and both just absolutely speedsters. And so, but they were fighting each other for who had the best average, and I mean the cheating that was going on.
There was no such thing as
there was no error on.
No errors. Everything was a hit.
Batting 870.
The reason I was involved with, because I do a lot of running classes, and they both were part of it, and they were both very good friends. But during that whole thing, it really hurt everything. And the two moms were crazy. Absolutely crazy. I got interviewed. We lost a game to Marina, 1-0, and Kathy Ponce was our pitcher at that time, and Kathy Ponce threw a no-hitter against them, but somehow they had 2 hits, both to Robin York, and I go, I was telling them, and my point was with the press is that sometimes in softball, you don't lose or you don't win a game. You lose it in 10 by doing things you shouldn't do.
Yeah.
And naturally, it came out in the paper. Doug Meyers said, head coach at Ocean View High School, said that Marina didn't deserve to win the game. And then I questioned. I said, what hits did they get? And they said, well, Robin got this hit here and this here and there. And I said, well, the first baseman missed the base, and then Doug Meyers questioned the scorekeeper of Marina. I forget what was it, Donna York or whatever.
It was Donna York.
Yeah, and anyway, my relationship with the Yorks went, down the tubes after that.
I went to the game, and so I saw her go 2 for 4. She had went 2 for 4. She was on base 4 times. And but they came out in the newspaper the next day. She was 4 for 4, and I said, "How were the other 2 hits?"
Sounds like if she's on, it's a hit.
For both of them.
Yeah, that was it for both of them. It was kind of interesting.
Here's one for you. It's just popped in my mind right now because we're having some fun with this experience. You ever had a pitcher that couldn't throw the ball to first base?
Oh, don't go. I've had the last.
What is this phenomenon?
Well, the last 2 was 2000. How many was that? 13. No, 12. 2012. We lost to a firecracker team that had that catcher that is at San Diego right now, San Diego State.
Genevieve.
Genevieve.
Yeah, she was great.
Catcher.
And we lost to Kenny Knighton's team, okay? Both of them we lost by one run. The first, Haley, ground ball to her, threw the ball about 20 feet away from the pitcher. And that
From the first baseman.
Yeah, from the first baseman. And the last one, Selena was pitching, and we were playing the Firecrackers. Same situation. She threw this ball into right field. and
It's from
the first and last game. But I can go through a whole list of them.
But it's from that time, like, even if you weren't aware that the player has that problem or that issue, but from the moment the ball hits the glove, I think time slows down, because it's like the ball exits the glove like this real slow, like almost like a javelin, the arms kind of come apart, but you could see this whole thought process of like, oh no, it's like this bad dream. And it's amazing what the mind can do to the body, because now where they pitch with such ease, they play catch with such ease, but now the arm becomes shorter, about 6 inches long. They kind of just throw either the dart into the ground or they whip it and throw it, no space awareness at all of what's going on. And to me, that is just, the yips are the yips, right? I mean, we've seen it happen to Steve Sachs and Chuck Knobloch.
That was a great story, the Chuck Knobloch one. I was really interested in what went through. I mean, he just out of nowhere, he was in the playoffs, and he was like one of the best young pitchers in baseball, and he couldn't throw a strike. I mean, not close. He was throwing wild pitch after wild pitch. And
Now this is who? Because Knobloch was
not
the second base.
Knobloch. I'm sorry. I was thinking you said the
Cardinal
pitcher.
Who are you?
The Cardinal pitcher.
The kid that threw really hard, a left-hander.
Yeah, they made an outfielder.
Yes.
Oh,
A lot of you will know his name out there.
There was an interesting situation on our team. We had a third baseman who couldn't throw the ball. This was really
That could
bad.
cause problems.
Really caused huge problems. And a great kid, too. And so Tony heard of this guy, correct me if I'm wrong, with this guy where you only phoned him. You did this thing on the phone with this psychological guy. And I don't know what the cost was. I think you paid for it.
It was worth it, though.
And it was maybe $600 or $800 or something like that.
Yeah.
Tony paid for it. And she gets on there, two times a week or some crazy thing?
We have a yip doctor, and here's how it came to be: is we were playing the Washington Lady Hawks, and so we've always been real competitive with Wayne Miller's group up there, and his team is usually coming out running and gunning for us, and so then she was actually catching. She was a third baseman. Your name you'll rename nameless. Don't worry, she's probably not listening anyways. Played third base, but she's also a catcher. Well, you can't hide when you're catching, that little double pump, that little whatever. And so it might have been mid-game. And Wayne comes up to me and says, your catcher has the yips. And I didn't really want to say yes because the game was still going on, so I didn't want to acknowledge that. And then here he goes. He starts running around. I didn't know where he was going to go with it. And he says, Tony, I have a doctor for her. And I looked at him. He says, we had a player last year that went through this. And he says, actually, the doctor's in California, so it's not as far for you. And he goes, and it's you only have to call him by phone. So it just happened to be for this particular player that Wayne Miller from the Lady Hawks had experience in this, gave us the number, and a month.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those things, Doug, where you don't even want to get involved. You don't even want to ask the kid, so how's it going? So what are they teaching you? You just want to, hope it goes away, because once it gets to that point, it's kind of like an eating disorder or something. Once it gets to its point of no return, it isn't mechanical, isn't anything. And she came back in about a month and did well with it. And
did well. She basically
got herself on our field on a championship
to win
game.
Nationals on the championship game. She played third base.
Wow.
We had to make a change at third base, and here she comes, and I'm going, whoa.
Uh-oh.
We're in the championship game here, and this kid comes into third base, and she was incredible, absolutely incredible.
Wow.
So whatever that, and I'd be fascinated and interested in knowing, what that method is, that professional method, and what
was it type of hypnosis or?
Like I said, you didn't even want to ask
never asked her.
because you almost felt like even in your good intentions of wanting to know, you could just disrupt the process.
I
just
did
let
say
him do
something one time to her, and she said, "I'm not supposed to talk about it."
Excellent.
Is what she said to me.
Yeah, just let it do what it's done. But we have the number if you ever need it, or if anybody out there ever needs it. You got a kid with the yips out there.
I used to think second baseman fell into that a lot because basically you're throwing the ball, but it's
a shorter throw. It could be a different arm slot,
so
right?
you almost aim the ball, and then you start making mistakes, and you get too conscious of what you're doing, and it just just like you were saying, you're thinking too much. It's like hitters that think too much.
Well, I'm thinking of Bull Durham. So when Kevin Costner's job was to make sure Nuke LaLoosh didn't think about anything, and he wants to shake off the curveball and throw the fastball, and then Kevin Costner goes back and tells the guy, "Here comes the fastball," and he hits a home run. It might be the other way around with a curveball or something. And then there was the Major League movie where the catcher couldn't throw the ball back. You remember that one?
I sure do.
And they started getting him Playboys. And he started memorizing the biographies of the centerfold. So he would be back there and he'd be saying, likes red wine, or, likes to take long walks. As he's throwing the ball back to the pitcher, he's repeating her biography just to take her mind off. Well, so much of this game, as we know, is psychological. The next time we get into the studio, Doug, I want to jump both feet into slapping. I want to talk about just things that we see out there, even compare notes a little bit. So, I love that we can give people maybe some different ideas and different options on things and how to look at the game. So we really want to get into that. So we're going to cut it short for today. Now we're going to wrap it up and go out and we'll have our Tuesday lunch. But I really appreciate you coming in, and Don popping in here at the end with everything go all right at the eye doctor. They're both open.
I'm getting some new glasses, and I'll probably see a little bit better. But
excellent.
Yeah.
Looking forward to it.
They won't do the glaucoma thing until they get real bad.
Do they take it out, put a lens in, or what with that?
Yeah, they do, but they won't do one.
Maybe we can get a video of that when it does finally happen. That'll be interesting.
I'll probably be dead before that happens.
No, you look younger every year.
Yeah, don't believe the guy. He's going to outlive us all. So, all right, everybody, thanks for listening, and we will see you all next week.
Looking forward to it.